for the folks at home. Yes, it is. Okay, you may start the meeting.
Okay.
It's live.
I'd like to call tonight's public hearing meeting being produced by the Board of Selectmen to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. This, by the way, is the first gathering of the three new selectmen that were just elected 2 weeks ago. So, of course, on my right I have Bill Meyer. On my left I have Selectman Bob Schmidt, and myself, Tim Keeney, first selectman. So tonight the board is conducting this hearing to take input, comments, and or recommendations concerning the establishment of a separation fund ordinance. At this time, the board will not be conducting or taking any questions or answers to the session. So it's only, we're taking input from the those that want to speak only. We don't discuss the matters. Don't answer questions. The Board of Selectmen will meet on Thursday, November 18th to vote on the following: to either adopt or amend or reject the proposed ordinance that you're going to be speaking about tonight. The ordinance, tonight's meeting was posted in the Journal-Inquirer on the 5th of November, as well on the same date on the town website and on Facebook. I'd like to ask our Finance Director, Mike Marinaccio, to explain the purposes of the proposed ordinance. Mike?
Okay. The ordinance, actually, the fund, the separation payout fund exists because it was created by the Board of Finance for practical reasons, to avoid cash flow issues and to avoid inconsistencies and operational predictability. It was felt that we needed to have such a fund. But at the same time they created that fund, they requested that an ordinance be instituted and adopted by the selectmen that would talk about exactly what is said in the advertisement here. Establish it for the rules of contributions, custody, use of money. So then, in essence, the ordinance is an internal control that controls the use of the fund. So operationally, the fund exists for consistency, but the ordinance itself tries to mitigate the risk of any misuse of these funds. So the funds can only be handled as such by the ordinance. So that's the purpose of the ordinance. It's a special purpose fund. There is no money in it right now. The money will ultimately put in at some point down the road, but that would have to go through a whole other process for an appropriation. So the ordinance itself is what it is, what it states, and like I say, the Board of Finance has asked the Board of Selectmen to adopt it. The Board of Selectmen have reviewed it, they have edited it, and they approved it. So that's it.
Great, thank you. So I'd like to open up the tonight's hearing for public comment. Please limit your comments to no more than 3 minutes if you'd like to make any comments about this ordinance. And who would like to be the first speaker? I knew you were coming up. Thanks for being here. Yeah, this is great. Please state your name and your address.
Steve Krasinski, 55 Wells Road, Summers. Let's see. I have questions, but you say you're not going to answer them, so I'll give them to you anyway.
That's fine.
Okay. Right now, there's a budget process in place that funds the separation benefits. Okay? There's a line item that's in there. And right now, my understanding, you got $10,000 in there. Okay. It gets funded during the yearly budget process. and it does get approved at a townwide budget referendum. So I'm confused as to why we need a ordinance to do what is already in place to fund it. So I'm confused, but I guess you can't answer that question.
Well, I think Mike could maybe just shed some light on it, why it makes sense.
So Steve, the line item is something that has to be funded every year and is taxed to the taxpayers. The fund itself will exist as a special purpose fund, which appropriations will go into it, and then the only money it'll be part of what is existing right now in the general fund, so it'll be reserved in this here, and it just doesn't go in, it goes in based on an appropriation. Annually, our actuaries will look at the unfunded liability that the town has with all of its employees. It's gonna look at how much would we owe if everybody left, and then they would come up with an actuarial contribution that would need to go into this fund. And then that amount would be in your annual budget in that line item. And then when the town approves the budget, that amount would go into this fund. Ultimately, this fund becomes self-funding, and that line item goes away.
Okay, so we'll be funded, my understanding, we'll be funded at a townwide budget process and get voted on by a town budget referendum.
Correct.
That's my understanding. Okay, now, the reason I'm bringing this up is because reading the warning, it was confusing, all right? And that brings my second question. We recently, rejected at a town meeting funding for $130K for a separation package, okay? It appeared like this ordinance was gonna negate that town meeting and then allow the selectmen to refund it, okay? And that, if that's occurring, I don't like that, I object to that, okay? So, I don't know if you wanna answer whether it's gonna do that or not.
It's not gonna,
It's not going to.
This just establishes
it's just,
the ability to create the fund,
these are
but
the
it
ground
doesn't
rules.
fund it. There's no appropriation, you have to have a separate
Right,
town-wide, meeting.
no money here.
Concurrence
This is
with the
ground rules
appropriation.
of the fund itself, how it should be handled.
Yeah, 'cause right now, currently, the Board of Selectmen needs to stay within the approved budget.
Yes.
So we can spend money, but only within the approved budget. We can request an appropriation from the Board of Finance up to $20,000 without going to town meeting. But I mean, you know the rules, anything over $20,000 will require, town meeting approval. So there's no appropriation here, just an ordinance to create
Just
an
ordinance to
establishment
create,
fund.
okay.
Yeah.
And you also know you could do a transfer if you want to, into
Yes.
that fund,
Yes,
from your current budget,
yes, if there's
without the
excess
town
funds,
meeting.
yes.
Okay.
You probably like that, I assume.
Yeah. Okay, my last one. The Employees Handbook. I could not find any Board of Selectmen approval of the Employees Handbook for either 2017, January 1st, or the revision, which came out amended September 17th, 2020. So if there is no Employees Handbook that has been approved by the Selectmen, I gotta say that it doesn't exist. So therefore, how can this document be used for a separation determination? To me, you guys have nothing to work with, unfortunately, okay? Because it's never been approved. And I went through all the minutes of all the years, and I could never find a selectman office, except maybe the selectman did it, first selectman, I don't know, but that's no good. So I guess the question to you is how are you gonna use this document when it doesn't exist?
Yeah, we'll explain that when it is required to have an appropriation.
Yes. Okay.
Thank you.
Assume it would be more be appropriate there.
Sure. Thank you,
Okay, thank you.
appreciate it. Are there any other comments or questions or recommendations? Right. no further comment, the public hearing will be adjourned. I just wanna add that if adopted, the ordinance will be published on the, 19th of November, 2021. And its effective date will be, December 4th, 2021. As I said, this will be, taken up, at tomorrow night's Board of Selectmen meeting at 6 o'clock. In this room, right?
Right.
Same back channel.
Yeah.
Okay. So, if you're very interested, we'll see you again tomorrow night.
And we'll have public comment tomorrow night as well, and it's a
Yeah.
very, it's a substantial agenda tomorrow, so, yes.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming, appreciate it.
Thank you, yeah.
Thank you.
You got there 5, 10 minutes early.
I know,